Just so you guys know, I am fully aware that I just did this huge book unhaul and now I'm doing a haul. And the reason is I have a problem. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and today I'm going to be doing a huge book haul. These are books that I've accumulated since I think March, so it's not like I just went out and bought all these books recently. It is over a span of time. Some of them I have talked about in previous videos, but I kind of wanted to do one big video where I just share all these books that I've gotten recently, and I'm really excited to because there are a bunch of books here ranging from romance, historical fiction, to adult fiction, to fantasy. There is a lot here, so I'm really excited to get started. Some of these books I am so excited to read, and some of these books I have read and have really enjoyed or not enjoyed. So we'll see. I'm really excited to talk about them, so we're just gonna get started. I don't really have a particular order that I'm gonna do these in. Essentially, I have just a huge pile that I made of all the books I've bought, and then I have a separate pile for my fairy loot books. So that's kind of like how I grouped them. It's not really make sense. I'm just gonna talk about a lot of books, and hopefully you'll get some recommendations, or you can tell me your thoughts on them. So I feel like I've said let's get started a few times now, but now we're actually going to get started. The first book on this pile is Ember of Night by Molly E. Lee. This is a paranormal young adult fantasy book that has a lot of trigger warnings for abuse and emotional trauma, so be sure to read through any trigger warnings online before you jump into it. In this book, we follow Harley, who has had a really tough life surviving the abuse of her father and kind of working through that until her 21st birthday, or sorry, her 18th birthday, when she can finally separate from him and hopefully take custody of her younger sister, until an angel shows up and tells her she is quite literally the key to stopping a war between heaven and hell. There are some really dark themes in this book. I did read it. I got an advanced reading copy from Entangled Teen, so thank you guys so much. And I thought it was a pretty good book, but this is the first book I am sharing with you guys. The next book I've gotten recently is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This is about like a tribe, I believe, and at a certain age, everyone in the tribe has their blood taken, and if they have a specific color of blood, that means they have magic and they have to be casted out of the village. So in this, we follow the heroine who has this golden blood, and she is kicked out of her village and everything she knows, only to find a group of warriors who also were kicked out, and they kind of band together to survive and kind of combat the oppressive nature of their tribe. This is one of the books I have not read yet. It is one of my anticipated books of the year, so I was really excited when I picked it up. I am so looking forward to reading this. I've heard such great things about it, and I think it's just going to be a really awesome read, and this is a young adult fantasy book. I'm trying to move through these as quick as possible because there are so many books here, but the next book I picked up was Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. So this is about a girl who works at a nursing home, and she never really leaves the nursing home. She's very sheltered, has an old soul, kind of dresses like the people that she takes care of, and how her world is kind of upended when this tattooed rich boy comes in to start working there because his dad owns the place. So this is kind of about their friendship and relationship. I have read this book. I will share more of my thoughts about it in my July wrap-up, but this was my first Sally Thorne book and I did not love it. So I will go over why more so in my July wrap-up, but this was just not for me. Next is a graphic novel called The Girl from the Sea by Molly Osterag. This is a queer romance between two girls. One is a human, one is a Selkie, and it's kind of about their forbidden love, their love story, and their journey and path for acceptance in this world. This art style, first of all, is what attracted me first. It is a beautiful art style. I'm trying to see if I can show you. Like, the colors are so beautiful. I don't know. There's something just that attracted me about the entire aesthetic of the book, and then when I read what it was about, I became even more enamored with the story. It is just a wonderful graphic novel about two girls and their love and just the beauty of that. It's so wonderful, and if you're looking for a sweet romance to pick up, I highly recommend The Girl from the Sea. Next up is a book that I picked up because it kind of reminded me of Red, White, and Royal Blue, and that is Playing the Palace by Paul Rudnick. I saw this on the shelf at Barnes & Noble and thought, why not? It's a short book, and while I did enjoy aspects of this book, it really was hindered by the fact that it was so short, so the author didn't really have a lot of space to really develop the characters and make me care for them. I kind of felt everything was just pushed at me, and I wish I had had more room to love them. So that's my critique with the book. Other than that, it's a pretty good romance. So if you're looking for a cute queer love story about a prince falling in love with a peasant, essentially, this is a good quick book to pick up. This next book was gifted to me by the publisher, so thank you so much, and that is The Earl, the Girl, and the Toddler by Vanessa Riley. So Vanessa Riley is apparently this really great historical fiction writer. This is the second book in this series, but each book is kind of a standalone. And while I think having read the first book would have made things much clearer for me, I was still able to read and enjoy this book without that context. We follow a girl named Gemina who was shipwrecked and lost all her memory, and she was put in a psych ward because of this. 2 years after she was placed in the psych ward, a lawyer named, oh my goodness, what was his name? Lord Ashbrook freed her, and she has spent the time since trying to help widows in England gain rights. So this path that she has put herself on allows her to, you know, cross paths once again with her savior, Lord Ashbrook, and this is about their relationship and romance. So it's a really sweet romance. Once again, I definitely wish I had read the first book first, but I was still able to enjoy and love it without it. So if you're looking for a cute historical fiction romance, this was a really great read. The next book is also a historical fiction romance, but it is one I have not read yet, and that is A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Mayhem by Amanda Collins. So this book follows a newspaper columnist named Lady Catherine Bascombe, who finds herself under a lot of speculation after an article she publishes about the current murder spree happening around England, and her path therefore crosses the detective on this case, who is Andrew Eversham. That's a really funny name. So it's kind of about her keeping showing up at his crime scenes and him being annoyed and them solving crimes together, I assume. I have not read it, but it looks really good. I've heard good things about it, and I love historical fiction romances, so I like that this one has a bit of a twist, that it's kind of centered around this crime spree that is happening, so I'm really interested to see what that does for their relationship and kind of how that all progresses. So really excited to read this one. The next book on this list is one I'm very excited for, but it is one I'm not planning to read for a while. I have a very specific time of the year I'm planning to read this, and that would be The Maidens by, oh my goodness, the Target sticker is still on this. Okay. Alex Michaelides. It's The Maidens. This is the same author who wrote The Silent Patient. If you've been at my channel for a while, you know horror is not really my thing. I've recently gotten into thrillers, but like I'm going very slowly, but I've heard really good things about The Maidens from some of my favorite YouTubers. So when I saw it in Target for 30% off, I was like, sure, why not? I'll read it in October around the spooky season and it'll be a whole thing. So I'm both terrified and excited to read this, but I still have a few months before I plan to pick it up. From what I understand, The Maidens, it follows a woman who suspects this Greek philosophy mythology professor of being a murderer, and kind of like how she sets out to like prove that he is a murderer. I feel like that's a very broad summary, but once again, like, this is a recent acquisition. I literally just picked it up because I've heard so many amazing things, and I'm really excited to read this when October rolls around. So next up I have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is such a good book. I recently finished it, and I will talk more about my thoughts in my July wrap-up, but essentially this book follows 3 women, 2 of which who live in the 18th century and run this apothecary that provides women with poisons in order to kill or hurt the abusive men in their lives, which is so interesting. And then flash forward to the 21st century, you have a woman who's kind of dealing with some personal issues who decides to take a trip to London, and there she finds evidence of this lost apothecary and decides to do some digging and kind of digs up this history that had stayed buried for so long. This was a really quick read. I read this when I was going through a pretty bad reading slump this month, and it pulls me out of it. It's so fast paced, it's so engaging the whole time. If you're looking for a read to kind of like whoop you back into reading shape, I guess, this is a good choice. It was just so quick and, you know, engaging, and I absolutely adored it. So I definitely recommend The Lost Apothecary. I think I'm at the halfway point with all these books. I still have like a whole other pile to get through. I told you guys there are a lot of books here, so I'm sorry if I'm going quickly, but there are so many books. Next up we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a adult high fantasy that so many people love and adore, and I saw it at Politics and Prose, which is this bookstore near me, and I decided to give it a try. So from what I understand, Poppy War follows Rin, who aced this kind of government sanctioned test that kind of tests your aptitude for certain things, and she gets accepted into this military academy where she discovers that she is a shaman who was chosen by the gods. So as she is kind of discovering all the powers and responsibilities that come with being a shaman, she kind of has to see... A raven just flew by my window. That was so ominous. Oh my goodness. Anyway, she kind of has to learn to balance her own powers and just kind of is figuring out how dangerous she is and which side she wants to use this power for. I'm really intrigued by it. I know it has really great elements of political fantasy as well as action, and once again, this is just such a popular book, and I'm really excited to kind of see if it lives up to the hype for me. Next up, I have The Song of Achilles, and this is by Madeline Miller. I cannot believe it took me so long to pick up this book because it was phenomenal. It is the story of Achilles and Patroclus from Greek mythology and their friendship and romance all within the backdrop of the Trojan War. So there's lots of politics, lots of action, lots of romance. This was a sweet book. Madeline Miller is such a lyrical writer, and the book had me in tears by the end. So if you haven't read Song of Achilles and you love mythology, I highly recommend picking it up because it's such a special book, and I'm really happy that I finally bought it and picked it up. So if you're on the fence, this is your sign to just take that plunge. The next book is also one I don't plan to pick up for a little bit because it's set in the colder months and I would like to read it then. I am a seasonal reader in that regard. Like, I read fantasy and romance all the livelong day, but sometimes when books are set in specific seasons, I tend to want to read them in that season. So this book, you kind of saw it when I waved my hand there, but it is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. So Frederick Bachman is an author I have been wanting to pick up for the longest time. I was really interested in his book called A Man Called Ove and Anxious People, but I saw this at a used bookstore and thought, why not? So I don't actually know much about it. I just kind of picked it up because I was interested in the author. So I'm just giving it a quick glance. So essentially I believe it is about this junior hockey team, and they're living in this very small town where nothing truly remarkable happens, and it's about their team and their story. So I love a human interest story. I love something that follows people working together and found family, and it seems like this book has elements of that. I've also really been interested in like sports books recently, mostly sport romances, so this is very different, but I'm excited to see if my enjoyment of those books will translate to my enjoyment of this book. So I'm really excited to read my first Frederick Bachman book. Alright, that was the first pile. I'm gonna go see if I can pick up the second pile. Okay, here we go. Ooh, that's a lot of books. So the next book in this haul is one I'm very excited for. It is a recent release, and I am buddy reading this in August with my friend Eva on Bookstagram. She is Evenfall Court, and I will link her down below. But this is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I adored Elizabeth Lim's Spin the Dawn duology, and I am super excited to read this book, especially with a friend in the month of August. So Six Crimson Cranes is a retelling of this story, and I'm not quite sure what the story is called, but in it, these six brothers are turned into cranes and they fly away, and the sister kind of has to go find them. So this is a reimagining of that story, and I totally could have gotten the details of that story wrong. I'm so sorry. But in it, we follow a princess who has this secret well of magic inside her, and her evil stepmother, to kind of quell that magic, turns her brothers into six cranes. and this is about her journey to save them. I believe there's also an element of the book where the main character cannot speak. I'm not quite sure how that'll play in, but either way, it's a really beautiful cover. It seems like it's going to be a beautiful story, and I'm so excited to read it. The next book I have here with me is actually the third book in a series, so this is the final book in this trilogy. I'm so excited to read it, and it is Grace and Glory by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the third book in her Harbinger trilogy, which is a spin-off of her Dark Elements series. So it's a lot, but I love this series. It kind of takes place in this world where there are gargoyles and demons, and gargoyles are there to protect people from the demons, but the demons aren't all bad. And I don't want to share much about this story because talking about this spin-off series gives away the original series it was based on. But this is the third book. I love Jennifer L. Armentrout. She's one of my favorite authors. Long before From Blood and Ash was like even a concept, I have been reading her books since I was in middle school, and it's so special to have an author kind of grow as a writer as you grow up. So like I was there for her paranormal aliens phase, and now I'm there for her like adult romance phase, but this is a book that kind of falls in the middle, but it's a really great series. I loved all the books. The last one ended on such a cliffhanger, so I'm really excited to pick up Grace and Glory and kind of finish that series out. Next is a book I've also finished this past month, so in July I'll share more of my thoughts in my wrap-up, but it is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. I also just did a whole vlog where I talk about this book, so if you want more thoughts on it, you should check that out. But in it we follow Zafira, who has become a hunter in order to feed her village, and we also follow a prince who is also an assassin and mercilessly kills for his father. This world where this story takes place, there is no magic. Magic has been sucked out of it, and darkness has replaced it, and the darkness is slowly taking over the kingdom. So Zafira and our prince named Nasir. Inan is in the next book. The prince Nasir, they go on this quest to find a way to bring magic back, but both have their own ulterior motives. This was such a rich fantasy world. I absolutely adored it. I think Zafira and Nasir were such dynamic characters, and I'm really excited to continue this duology. I'm excited to talk about it more in my wrap-up, but it's just such a wonderful fantasy world that I highly recommend. The next book, which I kind of talked about a little bit with the last book because I said the wrong name, is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I found this at a used bookstore, and I knew it was something I wanted to read, so I decided to pick it up. And it kind of has a similar plot to We Hunt the Flame, but not really. They're executed in very different ways. But this too occurs in a land that has been stripped of magic, and our heroine goes on a quest to try to find it and retrieve it. So it is such a beautiful story. It is told from three perspectives, which I really enjoyed because sometimes that's not done well, but in this case it was. And it's just such a great and magical story that talks about oppression and power versus the powerless. A lot of great dichotomies in this book. Anyway, if you are also interested in a rich fantasy world that just sucks you in, Children of Blood and Bone is a great choice, and I'm really happy that I got it. So now we're gonna move on to the Fairy Loot books I've gotten recently, and I wanted to do these separate because first of all Fairy Loot books are so unique. There's so many elements to them that make them so special, and I kind of just wanted to have a little segment where we could appreciate that. So I believe this was the March book of the month, but it is The Bright and Pale by Jessica Rubinkowski. I know nothing about it, but it is pretty, and it looks like it takes place in the wintertime, so that is when I will probably be reading it. We have some embossing on the cover, as well as some inside the cover art. It seems like it takes place in a kind of equivalent to Russia. It talks about how there is a girl named Valeria who, one of the only survivors of this huge frost to take hold of their village, and this is her journey to go save her friend who's being held by the Tsar and save her people. It does say this is inspired by Russian folklore, so that makes sense, and it's a beautiful book with some blue sprayed edges, and I'm excited to read this when it gets a little bit colder. The next one is another one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is The Prison Healer by Lynette Nomi. So let's appreciate the cover. We have these beautiful sprayed edges, which are purple, with have a little lock and key on the side. We do have inside the cover art that is actually like a work of art. And of course, inside the cover art. So lots of beautiful things in this book. And we follow Kiva, who is the prison healer essentially. She is there to heal and work with the prisoners to make sure they're healthy. And one day this rebel queen is brought in who is very weak, and they have sentenced her to this trial by the elements, and Kiva knows that this queen will die if she does this. So Kiva volunteers to take her place through this trial. If she wins, they both can go free, but if she loses, they're both essentially dead. So I am really excited to read this one, and I've just heard so many amazing things about the world building and the characters that I'm just so excited to finally get to read it. Next, we have May's book of the month, and that is Witches Steeped in Gold by Kianan Smart. So it doesn't say the title on the cover. It's a beautiful cover, by the way, but it does say it on the side. We have this kind of pattern on the edges. And we have a similar cover to the front as well as inside the cover art. It's a really beautiful book. From what I understand, Witches Steeped in Gold is about two rival witch clans and how one great evil will bring two of these witches together to stop him. That's a very basic summary of it. I'm really excited to read it though. It was also on my anticipated reads list for 2021, and it's a beautiful cover. Like, oh, doesn't this just entice you? Doesn't this make you want to read it? I am so excited to finally pick it up. The last book in this huge haul I have just done is Fire with Fire by Destiny Soria. This is the June book of the month for Fairy Loot, and it is about two sisters who are dragon slayers. One sister who would rather be doing anything but dragon slaying, and another who dragon slaying is her whole life. Once again, we have this beautiful cover and some dragon art inside, and of course inside the cover art. This book was not even on my radar. I had no idea that this was a book until it came in my Fairy Loot box. I had never heard of it, but seeing it now and reading about it, it looks really interesting, especially if you are a dragon lover. So I love that Fairy Loot, they provide you with books that are really popular and anticipated, but also books you may have never even heard of before, which is crazy because there's just so many people in the book community giving so many books buzz, you forget some books kind of fall through the cracks. I'm really excited to read this one and to kind of discover what it's about. It's about sisters, so I already know I'm gonna cry at some point having two sisters myself. I always cry when there are like sisters involved in books. It's really bad. But I'm really excited to read this one. And that was the book haul. I am not even going to try to lift them all up to show you because that seems humanly impossible, but I'm really glad that I finally got to share all these books with you. Even if I've talked about some of them before, I just like to have a video where I can have all of them in one place, hopefully to give you guys some recommendations on what to read next, and also so I can hear your thoughts on the ones I haven't read yet. I swear to God, my book buying ban starts now. I am literally not buying any more books until I finish all of the ones I have not read. Like seriously, like you need to hold me accountable for that. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and to hit the notification bell to get updates on when I post. A lot of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed, so if you would like to see more content from me, that is a great way to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Your support means the absolute world to me, and I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
A steamboat sailed ashore. It was calling